let's talk about how your life would actually change if we lived in a matriarchy. First, your nervous system would be different. You wouldn't be walking around with that constant tension in your body. You wouldn't feel like you have to monitor yourself all the time. How you sound, how you come across, how you're being perceived. You wouldn't be adjusting your tone to be more palatable or shrinking certain parts of yourself just to avoid friction. And that underlying sense of stay alert that so many women carry and have had to carry for ages, that wouldn't exist. Second, dating, mating would feel completely different. There wouldn't be this culture of ambiguity that's being rewarded. And women wouldn't be conditioned to overextend, over-explain, or hold on to potential that is never actually materializing. Third, your sense of self. Right now, a lot of women are taught, whether directly or indirectly, they're taught to see themselves through someone else's lens. Am I desirable enough? Am I chosen? Am I approved of? In a matriarchy, that lens flips. You're not waiting to be picked. You're not waiting to be picked. You're not waiting to be picked. You're the one observing, deciding, accepting, or rejecting. And that changes how you carry yourself completely. Fourth, the pace of life would be different. It would be slower. It would be more intentional. Not everything would be about speed, output, constant escalation. Grr. Decisions would be made with a longer view in mind, not just what gives the fastest return, but what actually holds up over time. So you wouldn't see the burnout that we see and experience in this life. You wouldn't see that being normalized. Actually, it would be a sign, not that it would even exist, not that burnout would even happen, but if it were to happen in a matriarchy, that would be a clear sign something is wrong. Destruction wouldn't be justified as progress or the way to progress. There would be a lot more awareness of consequences. And there would be no reckless impulse that's being disguised as ambition and progress. The whole structure of the world would feel totally different and would be totally different. Right now, a lot of systems are built around proving, competing, dominating, but in a matriarchy, it's less about who wins and it's more about what actually works long term, what is sustainable and what is healthy for everyone long term. And this is where it gets uncomfortable for some people, because if things were structured that way, a lot of what's currently normalized wouldn't hold up anymore. A lot of the behaviors that are tolerated right now would stand out immediately. A lot of the dynamics that people are used to, the toxic dynamics, would feel off, wouldn't be acceptable. So whenever people think matriarchy and they think, oh, that would never work, and they think it's unrealistic, most of the time, what's really happening is, what they really mean is, this is what I'm used to. I know how to function here, even if it's toxic and dysfunctional, even if it's not actually working that well and hasn't for generations and generations, but it's about what's familiar. And a lot of people are scared to shift from what's familiar, even if it's toxic. Familiar doesn't always mean that it's healthy. Familiar isn't always equivalent to something that's healthy. And something that's normalized isn't always what actually makes sense and how things should be. Just because it's normalized doesn't mean it's the best way to go about things. In fact, in this world, often is the case, almost always is the case, that it's the opposite of what makes sense and how things should be and how things would work in a more optimal way. What's normalized is the opposite of that. And this is where an open mind and a willingness to shift and change for the better is necessary in order to shift into a matriarchy. A matriarchy wouldn't just shift systems on paper. It would change how people relate, how people choose, what people accept, and what they don't. Once you open your mind to this and you start to really sit with it and think about it, and you start thinking about it in real terms, you start noticing just how much of what we live in and what we've lived in for such a long time, it's downright toxic and destructive. And a shift and a change is not only absolutely necessary, but it is, at this point, imminent. and certain to occur. Thank you for tuning in. May women continue to rise, and may the matriarchy rise.